welcome to our next video. Today I'm going to be looking specifically at the planning processes around getting ready to produce a website. It's important to know that this has links directly to the syllabus, website production requirements. Therefore, it can be HSC examinable. In the 2020 HSC, there was a question, one of the extended responses, the structured extended response, specifically around this content on the planning processes for websites. We're at the second real key process here of the website production process. Now, we received the brief. That was part of our assessment task. We've interpreted the requirements, so we've sat with the client and made sure we've understood everything and confirmed what's needed to be done. We're now in the process of, let's put some draft layouts together. Let's work out how our website's going to look, how it's going to work in terms of the navigation structures. All of these sorts of things really clearly done before we actually even open any HTML code and start producing a website. The first thing we're going to start with is this whole process around site mapping. Site mapping is the process where we move from our understanding of the brief into a bit of a skeleton layout of the entire site. This is going to include, usually in a graphical format, each page and how they are related and what sort of links there are between each page. This then determines our structure, whether hierarchical, linear, network-based, etc. And I'll give you some more detail of that shortly. And it's where we really need to start considering the user experience and the click-through from page to page. And when I talk about click-through, I mean how many clicks of the mouse does it take to get from the home page to the information that the user requires. As a bit of a guide, I'd recommend that 3 clicks is probably more than enough. Anything more than that, the user's going to get lost in your website. So we need to try and reduce the number of layers that we have. So when we're talking about site maps, the main one that you'd be familiar with would be a network. And most websites work on a network system as the core of their site. In a network, you can see I've got all of the individual pages listed. So they're indicated in the yellow boxes there, the home page, the products page, the about us page, contact us page, etc. You can see indicated by the grey line are the connections between each page. And if you follow the lines from the home page, you'll see there is a line from the home to the products, from the home to the contact, from the home to the travel tips, from the home to the sitemap, from the home to the tours, from the home to the photo gallery. By having a connection to all of those pages, it means that if I want to get to the sitemap, all I need to go is the home page and then click on a button, sitemap, and it will take me there. One single click and I'm there. You'll notice that I don't have a connection, I do. I have a connection to the About Us and Travel Us page as well. And as you go through each of those pages, you'll notice that they all have a connection to every other page. In a network, you can go from anywhere to anywhere else in a single click. Now, the way that this would normally display on a website, to get you a bit of an idea, you know at the top there's all those buttons in the navigation bar of the site that has all of the key pages? If that appears on every page of your website, then you probably have a network site. So if you're thinking of having a navigation bar, then you're probably thinking of a network. The next possible layout or possible type of sitemap would be a linear. In linear, you can either go forwards or backwards through the linear process, through the line, but you can't jump outside of that. So if I'm on the home page in the example you can see on the screen, I can go forward to products, or I can go from products back to home. I cannot get to the photo gallery without going from home, then to products, then to about us, then to contact us, etc. So you can see to get to the photo gallery, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clicks before I've seen any photos in the gallery. This isn't really great for the user's experience, is the first thing to consider. The second thing, if you've got information that's really important, 7 layers deep, no one is going to be able to find it easily, and therefore they're not going to read that important information. So you're probably going to have a lot of questions come through your website that are already answered, but the users can't get to the information. If you're on the About Us page, just to show you another example, I could go forward to contact, or I could go backward to product, but that's all. I cannot skip to any other pages. Where would I see a linear page being used? Very few websites. One of the ones that I would possibly think of may be a how-to website, like WikiHow, where it says, if I want to know how do I plaster a wall, I can go into WikiHow and it will tell me. It'll show the first step, and then I have to click next, and it takes me to the next page. I can go next to the third step, or I can go back to the first step, and that's really my only direction. That would be a linear-based layout. Other than for procedural or process-based information sites, a linear website is very unlikely that you'd be using it for your Nepal travel adventures task. The third key type here is hierarchical. You're probably recognizing this sort of structure from our second unit working in ICT as an organizational structure. If I replace the word home with CEO and the word tours with manager and the word travel tips with employee, that's an organizational structure. Hierarchies are all about parent-child relationships. Who is the parent? What are the child pages? If that child page is a parent as well, what are its children's pages called? Hierarchical works in that way. If I was on the home page in this example and I wanted to get to the Contact Us page, I would need to go to About Us and then Contact Us, 2 clicks. But if I'm on the home page and I want to get to Photo Gallery, I can use 1 click and go directly to Photo Gallery. Likewise, if I'm on the Travel Tips page, that's a linear connection to Tours, and then from Tours, a linear connection to Home. Once I'm at Home, I have the hierarchical connection back to the other sites. Okay? You can see that there are combinations that exist. You could have a combination of hierarchical and network. You can have a combination of linear and hierarchical, a combination of linear and network, a combination of all 3. But you need to understand that the way that you lay out your sitemap is going to determine the user's experience and how your navigation needs to work for your site. At this point in today's video, I'd ask you to press pause, go to your assessment task, look at the 7 pages that are required, map them out on a piece of paper and work out how you want them to connect. I would estimate that you're going to end up at a network, but I'm happy to work with any of the designs when we get back to class. When you're done, come back to the video and we'll move on. So you've now got your sitemap done. You've planned the layout. I'm going to be working with a network layout in my example, and we now need to move to wireframes. In a wireframe, you may hear people using the term storyboarding. It's not really a storyboard, but I can understand why they would use that terminology. The concept is very similar. This is where you're actually designing each individual page. Sitemaps are planning the site. Wireframes plan each individual page. These are really skeletons. We develop them over time and they move from skeletons to more fleshed out prototypes. But initially we start with some very basic boxes to indicate where are images going, where are buttons going, where will there be forms, where will there be text box. Once you've got all that done, you need to do that for each page. So if you have 7 pages in your website, then you should expect to have 7 wireframes that you draw up. For consistency, we usually find that there are common elements that are identical across all of the pages in our site. For example, you can see here I've got a menu bar that has home, menu, about us, locations, contact, a navigation bar of buttons. I would expect that that is in the exact same location, the exact same styles, exact same size on every one of my 7 pages for consistency and ease of user experience. By doing that, it helps to facilitate the network sitemap that I have designed. You'll see that there's some curious terminology here. iframe, for example. This is really just an intelligent frame on a website that contains content. You can put videos in it. You can put other websites in it. Okay? It's for non-text based things. Again, you could put text in there if you wanted to, but it really accepts just about anything. Image placeholders, footer. Footer is where you would put information like your copyright statements, for example, maybe your contact us details. Your banner, probably where your company logo would be located. That terminology translates fairly closely to some of the HTML code that we'll be using later on in our websites. The third planning process is then the cascading style sheets. Now, cascading style sheets can be done at the planning process, like I would recommend, but they will constantly be developed as you work on your website, constantly updated, constantly developed, until right at the end when you do your final test with the client, your style sheet is never final. Your style sheet is a document. It's a document that forms part of your website, and it outlines all of the styling and formatting information. HTML code was never really designed for formatting. When it was originally designed, we had really, really slow internet, and so websites were text-based. Over time, the W3C consortium developed parts of the HTML code to include some basic formatting, things like bold, underline, some really basic colors. But it was never designed for advanced formatting of the graphical websites that we now use. As a result, the W3C created a new style of code called CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. And this is where we can format specific elements of our HTML. The benefit of having it in an external document means that formatting is done in one location, content is done in a separate location. It makes it easier to edit your site, easier to maintain your site, and easier to change the style of your site, because that single style sheet, that single document, can be used for all 7 web pages to make them all consistent in terms of font sizes, font colors, layouts, backgrounds, etc. We talk about code, CSS code in our course as externally referenced because that's how we will use them. You need to be aware though it can be used inline, which means you can put the HTML code inside of your CSS document. It just makes it a little bit longer to read the code. It makes it that little bit harder to edit and correct the code. It also means that you have to retype the code for each of your 7 pages. You can't use the single sheet to style your entire site. Because you've got extra code in your HTML document, it also can potentially slow down the load time of your website depending on how much styling information you put in. There are far more choices when styling with CSS than when we compare that to HTML. To give you a bit of an idea, this is what your CSS code would look like. In this example that we've got on the screen, any of the text that is sitting in a paragraph indicated by P in the HTML page would have the color of red. So this is a very basic example of what your CSS code would look like. You'll see there that I've got terminology, selectors, elements, properties, tags, declarations. These are key terminologies that we need to know, and we'll continue to develop our use of those terminologies when we actually get into the nuts and bolts of using HTML to code a website. That's the end of our planning processes. Before you move on to the next video, I would expect that you have your wireframes completed for all 7 of the pages. I would expect that you have your sitemap completed, a graphical layout of your site and its navigation. These 2 tools are then taken to the client to get permission to start developing the website. Now, you may not be ready to start actually writing CSS code, but you should have a bit of a document where you've written down the colors, the fonts, the sizes of all the text that you plan to use in your site. We're lucky, we've been given a style guide by the company, so that's the document that we refer to. If you're not given a style guide, you need to create one to assist you in the creation of CSS code. Good luck with those tasks, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lecture where we're really going to start looking at the development processes around website creation.